Hey everybody, welcome to a new series of OG Therapy episodes called Kava Konfessions. Kava Konfessions is my way of paying respect and homage to the Polynesian culture. I've been fortunate to be the recipient of the love of Polynesian people and the Polynesian culture. My grandmother adopted me at a very young age and raised me throughout my whole entire life. She didn't treat me any differently than any of her other children. Of course, family should be there to help each other out, but Polynesians have a very interesting way of looking at culture and life. Polynesian people put social cohesion and social connection at the highest priority. So this podcast is inspired by the same spirit of connection and love, family, and community that the Polynesian people have shown the rest of the world. We've all been introduced to Polynesian culture more so now than ever, thanks to movies like Moana 1 and Moana 2. We've all known people like The Rock, Troy Polamalu, Junior Seau. The culture's influence has grown all throughout the world. So look forward to many episodes here on Kava Konfessions, where we're going to highlight certain people and certain stories to give us an opportunity to see how do you handle difficult relationships when you're already going through difficult things in your life. So without further ado, welcome to the Kava Konfessions.
Do not confuse this with treatment or mental health advice or direction. Nothing on this podcast is made to supplement or supersede the relationship and direction of your mental health caretakers. Although David Kozlowski is a licensed marriage and family therapist, he is not functioning as a certified mental health professional in this environment. And same applies to any professional who may appear on the OG Therapy podcast. Welcome to the OG Therapy.
Hey everybody, welcome to not just another episode of OG Therapy, but a very specific special series that we're launching called Kava Konfessions. But we spelt it with a K, Confessions. So anyone's wondering why we spelled it with a K? Because, I don't know, maybe I drank too much kava when I came up with the idea. I'm just kidding, but I'm very happy to have my very first guests on the show, Evie and Sunny Mahe. Girls, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate it. And it's not by accident that I picked the two of you for my first guest. It was something very personal for me because as people, have listened to in the intro, this podcast, unlike my other podcasts I've been doing for a long time where I'm talking about feelings and emotions and how to connect with your kids and family members and stuff like that, this podcast is kind of like me paying my respects to the Polynesian culture, what I believe the Polynesian culture is now able to do for a lot of people because it's more well-known thanks to movies like Moana, celebrity athletes, and maybe what's that guy named the Pebble or the Rock, right? Just kidding, man. Don't come beat me up or nothing like that. But it's just very interesting to me in my lifetime growing up to see the slow influence that Polynesian culture has had on just the greater culture as a whole, specifically here in the United States. I remember growing up, the only one I saw with a Polynesian tattoo was Polynesians. Now, a lot of people, and I think that's kind of like they have a connection to it if you're raised in Hawaii. So I'm not dissing people who have Polynesian tattoos that aren't Polynesian, but it's just very interesting to me that the culture has had a profound effect on a lot of people. And I believe, and we're going to talk about this today, I believe the biggest effect is the heart and the love of the people. Now, like any culture, you can't say everyone is the exact same. However, I think it's safe to say that anyone out there listening to this, if you've been fortunate enough to have Polynesian friends, it's a different type of friendship. And it's a different type of relationship. It's a different type of love. The laughs are different. And I don't know why that is, but I think maybe we might be able to figure this out today. It might have something to do with the language, because I know in like Samoan, they have less letters, so they're more direct in the way that they talk trash sometimes and joke around with each other, but it's fun, it's light, and I'm just excited to do a podcast that highlights what Polynesians have known for thousands of years. Life's all about family, friends, and community. At the end of the day, if you choose money over relationships, you might be making a very poor choice when it comes to your own well-being. Polynesians have been well known for being great athletes, for being fierce warriors in lots of situations. But when you're friends with people and you're family with people, you see that the heart might be the biggest asset to the culture, is that there's caring above anything else. Social cohesion and social connection seem to take priority in food gatherings and family gatherings, even the way they do funerals, even the way they pay respect to the people who've passed in their life. I just want to be able to share that with everybody. And so having you guys on today, We are going to talk about, some hard, very difficult, painful things. And the good news is we're going to talk about how that pain created a lot of purpose and passion and created even better relationships within your family. So let's start with you, Sunny. I've known you guys for a long time. It's funny. It's all of our listeners. Her husband's Reno, and I played football at the University of Utah with his brother. And so his brother always cracked me up. Just hilarious. You guys know Uncle Sione, right? Sione is definitely one of those guys. Sione, shout out. What's up, my man? He's one of those guys, when I first met him, he was always smiling. Hey, what's up? Always happy-go-lucky. But you don't want to see him when he's angry. And I found out really quick, you won't see him when he's angry if he's your friend. Like, that guy would do anything. I mean, he and I weren't even that close of friends because he's older, but if I knew, hey, son, oh yeah, what's up? What's up, cuz? Like, Sean, I need this. He was just always there. He's just a very loving, caring person. And so that's how we eventually, how we first met. And when I heard the story of what your family went through, and I just want to jump right into it because I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but when I heard the story of what your family went through, and I think everyone that heard that story, everyone that saw it on the news, stuff like that, you didn't even have to have kids to that one to really hit you hard. But everyone that does have kids and everyone I talk to, the people that didn't know you, and I know you got a lot of love online, and it probably would have blown you away. People didn't know you. We're like, what can we do for them? Like, how can we help them? And that says something a lot about a family, because I've seen lots of families as a therapist. I've seen lots of families go through trauma, and they had different levels of support. But I noticed the different levels of support was always like a mirror image of the support that they gave other people. So I noticed the people that were more quiet, isolated themselves, good people, when they went through trauma like losing a child, they got support, but you could tell their family and friends community, they didn't really know how to communicate with them what they needed. They didn't feel like they had the right or the ability to just boldly say, hey, I'm taking food at your house whether you like it or not. But when you have a close relationship with your community around you, and then you go through something, people don't really need to guess what you need. There's a different connection there. So, Sunny, if you wouldn't mind, please sharing with us how much ever you feel comfortable about, what your family went through. And let's just start with that so we can pay respects to that and tell it properly.
Okay. So back in 2016, I was at home with my kids and my 3-year-old daughter at the time. She had an accident at home. She got entangled in the cord from our window blinds. And I took her down and I did CPR, and we had our life flighted to Primary Children's Hospital, and she spent about a week there. And over the course of that week, she showed some signs of improvement and then some signs of decline. And so we really had every reason to hope for the best possible outcome. But ultimately, she passed away after a week in the hospital. And throughout the course of that week, we just experienced so many miracles, so much generosity from friends, neighbors, strangers. And, as you were talking, I think that where Polynesians maybe differ sometimes is they have a great balance of generosity and gratitude. That I think that it can be really hard to be the recipient.
To ask for the help or receive the help.
Mm-hmm. But because gratitude is so ingrained in the culture, it makes it a little bit more natural for people to give.
Yeah.
Because they know that you will accept because you feel comfortable accepting because you give.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to articulate with people that didn't really get a lot of support after a tragedy, because they didn't understand, like, that giving wasn't something they weren't sure. When you give a gift, you want to make sure it's received well. Because if you really work really hard to give something to someone, they're like, oh, thank you. It's like, oh, like, I was kind of hoping it'd feel better than that to help out. Yeah.
So I've talked about this with my husband a lot. Like, it's actually made me uncomfortable sometimes how much he's willing to ask from people. But I think it's because it's never anything more than he would be willing to give. And so he's given away cars. His family has given away houses. They've given away so much that they do feel like they can ask that from other people. And it's a reciprocal thing. It never feels like he's taking advantage of people. And so I do feel like in that process of, when we were going through something that was really, really hard for our family, we experienced just an overwhelming amount of generosity from people. And it's something that in turn we have tried to pay it forward, because you can't possibly give back, reciprocate to every single person. Like, it's not, I don't even know who a lot of the people were that came and did things. We still find it out occasionally that, oh, that was the person that dropped off the carpets for our garage. We just found that out last week. That was the person that, you know, and there were so many little things, and it was just a lot of people doing little things, you know, just the little thing that they can do. But it just became this huge blessing for our family that, you know, we believe that you have to look for the reciprocal blessings, right? That when you experience something really difficult, the compensatory blessings, I believe, is what they've been called. And we definitely experienced that.
You know, that really, I hadn't considered that before, but now that you're saying it, I get what you're talking about, because I've seen that in my own life, where when you're a really generous, giving person, even though you don't want to be like the service project, right? When someone asks to help you, you don't want to be like, oh, people are baking me cookies now? Oh, no. Like, oh, I'm used to baking other people cookies. But I noticed that I would receive it. And one guy told me one time, and it was nothing in comparison with you guys, just going through like a regular hard time. And I said, no, I can't accept that. He goes, you would do this for me. And so when you said that about Reno, I think that's what stands true. Like, they know that you guys would do that for them, if not more.
Yeah, and I think that when you don't accept, then it puts your friendships in a position of you're on top.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm supposed to reach down and help you.
Yeah.
And so when you reject it, it's like, no, I'm better than you, so I shouldn't.
Well, yeah, like what they have to offer
help
isn't good enough, because I don't need your measly help.
I'm the one that serves you, because it puts me on top, it puts me above, and so it kind of evens out the friendship, because we all go through things. We're all going to need somebody sometime.
You know, you see the same thing when people just try to give like regular compliments. And if someone's like, no, I won't take it, like, huh? Like, what? You compliment me? Like, I was trying to, like, you want to be reciprocal with that. And when someone doesn't accept it, and when I've worked with a lot of my clients, I'm like, you've got to accept, you got to say thank you. And not be like, no, it was you. It's like, if you don't accept it, you're not accepting their expression of love to you. And then they feel like it's a short-sighted relationship. They don't feel like they're at your level. They feel like you said, like they're below you.
Yeah.
You know, I got a question for Evie. And, when I was thinking about how we're going to bring it up, like what happened with your family, and, you know, you and I had talked before the podcast, I was like, I don't want to focus on the hurt and the pain, because you can't change that, right? Like, that's what happened is what happened. I feel very blessed to have sat with so many families for over a decade that have lost a child, that have lost a sibling, a parent, whatever it is. And to see that evolution, I wish I could say that they always evolved for the better, but sometimes it's not that way. And having you guys on here, it's like there's a tipping point after death and after, you know, not after grief, but while you're grieving, that every member of a family has to make multiple decisions on what way they're going to go. And that sometimes is hard for parents to watch. Sometimes it's hard for kids to watch their parents. Not saying you guys, but I've worked with a lot of kids like, hey, my mom and dad, I'm kind of their parent right now. You know? But when you see someone go through those things, and I'm sure you would agree with this, like, it's hard to judge someone. Like, when they go through something like when you went through, it's like, it would be easy to be like, oh, they should just do this. But it's not that easy. And so I want to ask Evie, like, you being the oldest sister in the family, and we're going to get into this in the podcast, because I know all my normal listeners will be like, wait, oldest daughter? Like, we want to hear how this goes, because I've done many, many episodes, and according to the analytics, our mother, oldest daughter, father, oldest son ones are in the top 2 with the statements versus questions one. People really relate to this dichotomy. Well, it's just this interesting, what I call a symbiotic relationship between a mother and her firstborn biological daughter, and a father between his firstborn biological son. So the question I have for you, because as I was talking to your mom about how do we set this up, I'm like, let's just state it. Let's just say what it was, because there's no shame in something that you didn't create, you didn't cause, you had nothing. It just happened. It was a legitimate accident. So why focus on the things that could create someone listening to this to overwhelmingly feel hurt and pain for the loss of their child, why don't we focus on what grows from hurt and pain? What purpose can come from it? And so, Evie, you know, you hear your mom tell this story, you hear her talk about your dad and the whole entire, like, you know, gratitude and stuff like that. When you, because you were about 8th grade, right? Mm-hmm. 8th, 9th grade? Okay. When all this happened, what was it like for you being the oldest daughter? Was usually like, okay, mom's like, hey, you're my right hand man. You go make them do this because I got to make these kids do this. You got to get them to do their chores. What was it like for you watching your mom experience this?
It was pretty difficult. I do think it was a blessing having so many people around all the time, because watching my mom, my parent, watching anybody really during that time grieving, it was just one of the hardest things. It was harder even than focusing on my own pain, was seeing how it was affecting everybody else. And
that's why I asked you the question. Because I know oldest daughters always are not thinking about themselves when it first happens.
Yeah, specifically with my mom, looking back, I didn't realize how attached my mental state was to how I was seeing her doing. When there were funny things happening, were the lightest moments, or I was like, okay, everything's okay for this moment. And
so you'd smile and be funny too. Like, yeah. Be happy now.
And when I could see she was really struggling with telling us with something, it was, oh, I have to be very serious right now. Something is very wrong. And it was so, looking back, in the moment, it was very numb. It was very, I just need to feel what I'm supposed to feel. What is the most helpful thing, or what do I need to be feeling right now? And looking back, it was very interesting how connected it was to how my mom was feeling.
You were following their lead and like, am I allowed to feel this? Okay, no, I gotta be serious now. Yeah. Well, I can laugh now. Okay, I can laugh now. Hey, I'm hungry. Am I allowed to eat right now? But that's what it's like after trauma. People, like, you get asked, like, what day is it? Like, I don't know what month it is. What are you talking about? Like, you're so, when something so life-changing happens, everything else doesn't matter, right? So that's why oldest daughters in these situations will always turn to their mom, and they're not saying it, but they're like, tell me what to do by me watching you. And then moms are like, I don't know what to do. Who's going to tell me what to do? And so when I asked you that question, it was something that I expected you to say, but one thing that you said that I didn't expect you to say, well, not that I didn't expect you to say, just maybe it was just, I really caught my attention, is when you're saying, like, it helped that there's a lot of people around. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more about that. Why did that help so much? Because unfortunately, a lot of people in their greatest times of grief, and people listening to this, they may be listening to this going, oh, I'm isolating myself right now. Maybe that's why it's not making it easier. So why do you think that helped?
Yeah. I don't think there was ever a moment I was allowed to be isolated, in and out of hotel rooms, and the entire family was staying at the house.
You're talking about when she was in the hospital. We weren't living in a hotel.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but family were coming to visit, staying in hotels and at the house. Yeah.
I remember being just with my cousins a lot specifically. There was a lot of times that I don't know how to make this sound nice, but there wasn't a whole lot of time that I actually could sit down and just talk to you because of how busy you were, and you were focusing on a whole lot of other things. And so instead of being isolated, me and my siblings or my cousins, whoever was there to get me through the times, it was a lot easier to kind of process what I was feeling, because I wasn't so worried about what everybody else was feeling. When everybody else was processing at their own paces, I guess, it made it easier for me to fall into myself a little more when I wasn't thinking about what do all the older people need me to be right now. When I had my friends and my cousins, and they're just kind of trying to laugh. They're just want to sit in silence for a little while, or we're all watching the little kids so I can just be on my phone for a second. It gave me the necessary amount of space and friendship, or I guess connection,
Like
a right mix of
fellowship,
both,
like, yeah.
to process it however I needed to in the moment.
This is great information for anyone out there listening to this, because I mean, you're in 8th grade, you're in middle school, right? And no disrespect to all the middle schoolers out there, but that's not the best teenage years. Look at your 8th grade picture, 7th grade picture. You guys listen to this. Like, that's not the one you're posting up. Like, hey, look at me. Right? That's those times, right? So there's always a lot of body changes, friendships. Like, you're starting to like, oh, people judge you in middle school. Like, it changes everything. And you being the oldest daughter, and like I said, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but you being the oldest daughter, you're just naturally going to be like, hey, what does mom need? What does dad need? What does the family need? So what you're saying is that being separated from the adults for a little while and being with your cousins, whatever, it added some just normal stuff that happened during the day and that allow you to think about how you actually feel. Maybe you could cry because in front of your mom, maybe it wasn't always easy to cry because you didn't want to add more. Now I got to worry about her. She's crying. Because I've talked to a lot of moms who have lost kids, and I tell you, every single one of them was more concerned about the people that were concerned about them, not themselves. That mean they weren't as concerned about themselves as they were about their friends. Our mutual good friend, Heidi Swap, the story goes like, she had like 500 texts, and I told her daughter, take your mom's cell phone and don't give it to her. She's trying to tell people it's going to be okay to them when she was the one that was going through it. And I'm like, no, you have to allow them. Well, you don't have to, but you should allow them to help you. And as a young teenager going through that time, what you needed was also to just be around regular teenagers that didn't just lose a sister. Is that what you're saying throughout all that? Like, it helped out a lot, just that community of just being friends and them cracking jokes. And yeah, maybe you cried every now and then. Like, wow, I didn't mean to, like, I'm sorry, that joke was funny. It reminded me of something. And then it made me cry.
I think I was in 8th grade at the time. So that was... what's the mime challenge thing where you play a song and everybody pretends to be
I remember that. Yeah.
That was really big at the time. So me and my cousins, I think while at the hospital, we went up and down the elevators just doing that challenge. And that's a very specific moment I remember as being a good time for me to, I guess, fall into myself again and not worry about this person's feeling this way, this person's feeling that way. I have to make sure I'm doing X, Y, and Z. It was much more, I'm really sad right now. I don't really want to be in this low place I've been in for the past couple of days. It's okay that I'm a little better right now. It's okay that I have friends.
You don't need to feel
doing
bad
better than
because
I
you're
was
laughing.
thinking. Yeah.
Because that's the hard part when people are grieving. You almost feel like you're not allowed to be happy ever when that's a miserable life. Like, and how much does humor help in those situations?
Oh, a ton. I think without humor, I wouldn't be okay today.
And I'm sure other cultures could claim this too, but Polynesians love to laugh and joke around and not be serious. They love that side of themselves. So if you have something so serious, that's not a comfortable place for a lot of even your family members to be in. They're all hurting, you're hurting. So it's cool that you had those memories in the hospital, because too often people can't even go back to those hospitals. And if you have to go back to a hospital, yeah, you're going to have that hurt and pain, but to have a couple moments like that just softens the blow a little bit to like, yeah, it was a horrible thing, but the support I had was not horrible. You know, as you're listening to Evie talk about her experience, I'm curious to know, like, you had to have been thinking about when she was in 8th grade, like at that time, like remembering that. What do you remember in regards to kind of the same question, but back to her? What do you remember in regards to what were you thinking and what were your concerns when you had the time to think about that, about your oldest daughter? Because you obviously know the oldest you're going to expect more out of. You're going to, hey, I need help with certain things. But what were some of your thoughts and worries, concerns, or was there what was going on when you were watching her at that time?
You know, there's no way to prepare yourself to deal with that in the perfect way. And so the way that I had kind of chosen was that I wanted my kids to see that it was okay to feel emotions.
You didn't do the, with all due respect to Polynesian, old school Polynesian culture wouldn't do that. Like they would be like, I'm going to hold it back. So that's a little bit more of a new school poly thing. Yeah. Show your kids the emotions.
But, I mean, everybody's going to take that differently, because when I was thinking that I was showing them, it's okay to cry. This is sad.
Yeah.
And it would be the same if it was you. Every single one of you is irreplaceable. Yeah. Like there's no way to fill this hole right now. And that's okay. So you weren't trying to give the false thing that you're so strong that it doesn't bother you. That's what I meant by it. Because obviously Polynesians are very heartfelt and they'll cry at a drop of a dime if they care about, but sometimes it's trying to be too strong. Yeah, I didn't try that, but it
you probably didn't have the energy for that either.
Well, and I kind of worked not in my favor, because I think that Evie in particular took that to mean, my mom is already so sad. I couldn't possibly add to that. And so she's the one that kept everything tight.
So that was a worry of yours during that time that...
Absolutely. That we wanted them all to be able to express freely, but I don't think she necessarily gave herself the room to do that, because she felt like that's too much already. I couldn't possibly add to that.
Do you think it's possible for moms, and this one's not specific to you, but do you think it's possible for moms to go through something like that you guys went through, to look at your oldest daughter and see that so much of her development has to be on timeout and pause because what's going on, right? And seeing that and not being like, wishing that like you could give her that time back, or like not wishing like you could be like, I wish it doesn't have to be like this for her. Like, I wish it could have just happened the way it's normally supposed to happen. Did you ever, because I've had some moms tell me things like that. They like, even though it wasn't their fault and they couldn't prevent it, they just felt like it's not fair to my kids. Like they have to go through this.
Yeah, I think life is just full of lots of unfairness. And obviously we don't want anything bad to happen to our kids. Any of them. We don't want them to ever have to experience any pain or sadness, or especially grief over a loss of a cherished sibling. But that's where we have kind of found it helpful to fall back on faith, because the God that I believe in, there's absolutely nothing that I can teach him about unfairness.
True that. True that.
And so I've found a lot of comfort in that he knows.
You're like, this is not personal.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't like God did this to our family.
Right. And so that has helped me to have hope and to feel comfort that that everything will work out eventually.
With all the mothers, because I know tons of moms have opened up to you throughout the years, right? Like you've been a great resource to so many moms. And it's funny because like I used to talk with Heidi Swap about this, my old podcast host, for anyone new listening to this, she had lost her son to suicide. And she was obviously trying to help out as many people as she can. And sometimes it feels great and sometimes it feels exhausting, right? And so when you've been helping out mothers going through this thing, what are some of at those moments, right? Like, let's say the first month after the tragedy of losing a child. Because obviously those are the moms that are like, hey, I'm kind of, or you see them online and you reach out to them, right? You're like, hey, you're not alone in this. So what's some of like the most sound, helpful advice that you found when they're going through like that first month or two? They're kind of, you know, they're just like, kind of like, like they don't really know what's going on. They don't know if it's up, down, left, right. What are some of the things that help soothe them and ground them when nothing was soothing and nothing was consistent? Could have been support, it could have been actions that you took, because there's so many people that hit me up all the time, like, what do I do in this situation? I'm like, I can tell you what other people that have gone through it could have said, but I've never gone through that. So what are some things that have helped or worked for different types of people? Because everyone's loss is different. No one, right. Some people will be like, I hate God. Some people are like, I need God. Some people are like, I don't believe in God. You know, so what are some general things that just help soothe the hurt and pain?
I think a huge one is just connection.
So like finding ways that you can connect with them?
Just having some form of connection with people. Okay. That by nature, I'm not very outgoing. I'm really not. It's something I've had to work on. And
that's your husband. Let him do all that, right?
Exactly. And I hope I'm a little better about it now than I used to be. But but I found a lot of solace in even just expressing my thoughts online. That it felt like I still had connection with people and people still felt connected with me. That I never felt pressured to keep everything so private because it didn't feel natural for our family. I mean, my husband has, been in the media since he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And he was working at BYU at the time. And so we got a lot more interest, I guess.
Because of his position.
Because of where he was at the time. And it didn't really feel natural for us to say, hey, pray for us, but we're not going to tell you what.
Fair point. True. Very fair point.
So it just kind of felt a little bit more natural for us to share that burden a little bit and let people know what was going on and how we were really feeling and how things were really going. And then it didn't feel unnatural when people wanted to reach out because they knew what was going on.
They felt like they knew, and a lot of people through online, even though they didn't know you. And that's, I guess, what's so cool about the podcast and online things. Like, you feel a close relationship with someone you've never even met.
Yeah.
Because they expressed something that was like, it like really resonated with you and you're synced with them. Same thing we do with musicians. They make a song, you're like, yeah, that's what I've been trying to say for the past 30 years of my life. Finally, someone figured out a song to express myself. And so, I want to ask Evie too, and this takes me into another conversation, is expressing hurt and pain online. Because this is kind of a little tricky. And obviously you're younger, so I want you to weigh in a lot on this one. So for all of our listeners out there that don't know this, some people will take their tragedy, their struggles, whatever, and they will put it online for support, to get help, to let their community know like what you guys did. And then other people, that's what they say they're doing it for. But the way it's expressed, something feels different about it. Something seems like they're selling something. Something seems like it's more for a self-centeredness, personal thing, not for the betterment of the family or what other people's grieving is going through. So for you, you found that was helpful. How were you able to, now I know it's a personality thing, but how were you able to put that stuff up online and still be protective of the passing of your daughter? Because that is a serious issue with grief. We're very protective of our loved ones that have passed away. Nobody wants, because the internet's a wild place. And I've seen people in the YouTube comments say things like, this kid's dying of cancer and went through treatment. Like, they don't really have cancer. People can say some horrible things. So I'm wondering, how did you navigate that to use it in a beneficial way? Because, man, when parents are out there losing their kids and they're out there posting everything, I'm like, hey, that's good. Oh, that might be a little too much, though. A little bit too far on the information about, like, what you did that day. So how do you manage that? Like, how did that work for you?
For me,
or how'd you make it work?
A lot of it was faith-based.
Okay.
That when I would write, I typically felt led to my faith. And so I don't feel like... So that's the connection part where you're like, someone... Isn't it crazy? Like, I need to say it this way and I don't know why, but it might be someone else needs to hear it this way. Okay. Yeah. And so a lot of it was processing for me, but processing in a way that incorporated hope.
Yeah.
That I never wanted to just spew my pain and just throw that out there onto people. Here you go.
Here's Tuesday, 10 a.m. Cry.
Yeah. Without also the hope and the faith that, this is really hard. This is a really hard thing that I'm going through, but I do believe that it gets better. Yeah. And I think without that, you can get stuck. You can get stuck in the cycle of sadness
or the what ifs, maybes.
Right. Or just if you're constantly needing the validation for the sadness, yes, you're right to be sad, then it can start to feel like
that's your identity.
This is who I am now, and this is how it's always going to be.
You will always be introduced. Oh, this is my friend Sunny. She lost her daughter. You don't want that to be your identity.
No.
Every family I've ever met that lost kid, like, I swear, if one more person introduces me as it's like the person that lost their kid, like, come on, man. Like, I got other things that have happened in my life too. But I think the reason why people do that is they're trying to force a connection and force someone to be more respectful to you, give you more love and admiration. And sometimes that can work, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to ask people for any sympathy or anything. You just want to share things that you feel guided by your faith and your spirituality that's meaningful to share, meaningful and purposeful, not selfish.
And I think that, my experience of it is that there is a real temptation to continue on in the sadness, because you get a lot of validation. You get a lot of people that will tell you, oh, you're so strong, and, all the things. And so it's been kind of a conscious choice. Like, is it going to be okay with everyone if I heal? Is that going to be okay? I don't actually want to just sit in sadness forever. Like, all you people that are
crying every day at 3 p.m.
Like that's going to be okay too, right? Like, and maybe some people dropped off along the journey. They didn't want to hear. I don't know, but I do feel like there is that temptation because of the validation you get for it, that maybe, people like to feel sorry for people sometimes. They want to connect that way.
But when they feel like that's the only connection to have with you, that's not good either.
Yeah, that doesn't,
because there's more to you and your family. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to Evie about this in the past, where it's like, you're proud to be a Mahe, as you should be.
Oh, yeah.
And with everything that's happened in your family, I know every time I talk to young people that have lost loved ones, a close friend, a sibling, whatever, when they see other people, that this is a terminology that I've heard, and I just use it because it's kind of shocking. When they see other people prostitute deaths online for attention and clicks, it angers them and makes them feel icky and gross because they've lost someone. So I want you to share, Evie, like, why are you proud about your family, how your family has been working through this in comparison? Because we're not judging. I'm not talking about anyone specific, but when you watch people online do things for clicks, that's really personal. You probably have a keen sense like, that's not really healing. That's not really a good thing. That's more for clout. So compare those two, the people that do that, how your family's handled it, and why you're actually happy. Because obviously looking back at it, Sunny, there's obviously things, we probably should have done this a little different. But the majority of the approach of it was, we're going to do what we feel inspired to do. And that may not always be easy for other people. And that may not always make us look like super amazing people, but it's where we're at now. And then next month, we'll see where we're at then and continue to share according to how we feel at that moment. So what are your thoughts and feelings when you see people post stuff like that? And then why are you just happy your family dealt with it a different way?
I would think it's very limiting to constantly be posting about how depressing this is and like, oh, look how horrible and how traumatizing this situation is. And I think you are essentially putting yourself in this box of like, this is a defining characteristic of me now, is I'm this traumatized, horrified person. Yeah. And now this is my life, is just sadness and
follow my journey of pain and sadness with no hope
and depression, and it never gets better because I'm just so sad. I think it's very limiting. And I think in contrast, what our family has done is it's been a learning opportunity where everybody dies, and not everybody has the trauma of, I lost a sibling at a pretty young age, but I do have the knowledge of what it's like to go through a death in the family. And I had the opportunity to learn and process that. And because we looked at it through the lens of hope in a very healthy way, and it's a growth thing now and not a limitation of mine, I like to think, where I did get strength. Our family got stronger because we leaned on each other in those moments, and we didn't look to ingenuine comments online to strengthen us and help us get through every single day, where we looked at it as a process of, this week is better than last week.
This week sucks less.
And it's a continuation of, we're moving forward though. And it will get a little better. It might not. Some days will suck, but looking at it through hope, I would say just opens up the door for growth opportunities. Whereas looking at it through how did you phrase it? The prostitution of death online.
Like prostituting like someone's death, because that's what it is. You're selling something. Like when prostitutes sell their body, that's like sacred. When you sell like grief, that's not sacred.
Yeah. It's not sacred. And even the idea of like selling it, it's now a transactional thing where
you could literally make money.
I give you this and you give me that, and then that's it. Like there's a finality to that. Whereas because of our faith, I believe that there's eternal progression, that I'm going to keep learning and keep getting better. And I don't think that you have that opportunity if you choose to put yourself in that box of, I'm always going to be sad because of this. I'm always going to be traumatized and hurt, and it will never get better.
And everybody has to know my pain when you address me. Oh, you have to consider what I've been through before you talk to me. That means I need to be treated differently. And you guys don't want that attention. You don't want to be treated any different than before you had this horrible accident to your family until now. Now, granted, you guys evolved and you're not the exact same people, but you don't want to be treated differently. That limiting, you hit it right on the head, Evie. When someone is trying to give support to people and those people are constantly putting their personal information online, like real hard, like grief, like what we're talking about, and people are trying to give support, the support is limiting. Because you don't know how to support someone that your exchange of support has always been, I feel bad for you. Thank you. I'm so sorry I went through that. Yes, it is hard. At certain times, like, you kind of run out of like, now what do we do? And that's where my own personal experience, I'll weigh in on this one. I've had clients in the past that admitted to me that they got addicted to the support. And it wasn't a healthy addiction, because if they got on Instagram and they didn't get enough heartfelt I'm sorry's in the comments, they didn't feel good. And as I worked with them through this, and no one, just be clear, they didn't want to do this, but it was like someone that's depressed, they don't feel good. And all of a sudden, like, every time I drink alcohol, it consistently makes me feel something, and feeling something's better than being numb. And then next thing you know, it becomes their main coping mechanism, and they don't grieve. So when you say it's limiting, you don't even have a college degree or graduate degree in psychology. You hit it right on the head. It's limiting in many ways. Mom, do you agree with that? That it's limiting when people just don't really have that ability to, like, our whole relationship is just grief.
Yeah, and as she was talking, I was thinking about how one of the things that we've always believed growing up is that all things in opposition, right? And so the depth of sadness that you feel, that you have the capacity for, it opens you up to heights of joy.
It's like a swing. If you can go this high in pain, that means you can go that high in happiness.
Yeah, because as I think about a reunion with that daughter, like, I feel a different level of joy than I think many people can even fathom. Even just the hope of having that. And so if you just get stuck in the depths, then you're missing the heights.
Yeah, focusing on one of the feelings and experiences is very limited because of that. Because grief, there's not one stage.
Right.
There's multiple stages of grief. And life, like, yeah, this is a chapter, a very big, long, painful, hurtful chapter of the Mahe book. And keep reading. There's more. There's keep reading. We're still writing it. You guys are still writing the book as you go. Something came to my mind, Evie, and this is going to trend perfectly into the mother oldest daughter relationship conversation, because I don't know if you've known this, and if you haven't had friends tell you this before, I'm going to tell you because I know it to be true. But I wouldn't be surprised if you had this experience. A lot of people became nicer to their little siblings after that had happened to your family. I know a couple of people that told me that personally. And they know you guys not really closely, but when they saw that, they're like, a teenager when it happened, they're like, hey, come here, I'll play Legos with you. And that's something that I didn't even see coming when I was working with grief, that what you're going through affects your friends who are your age. Because when you're in high school, it's like, oh, to care about your siblings, that's not cool. They're just annoying until they're not there. And I remember I had a mom one time say something I'll never forget. And she goes, you know, you're stepping on Legos in the middle of the night. You're like, I swear, if they don't pick up these Legos, like, you're going to lose your mind. And then your child's gone from this earth. And she goes, what I wouldn't do to step on a Lego. And I think that's the experience where people, the famous saying, like, you got to learn from hardships and mistakes. But please, you don't have to have all the hardships and mistakes. People can learn from what you guys have gone through and have appreciation. Like you said, the gratitude can come through someone else's pain. It doesn't have to be through your own. And that's why everybody's, don't go to sleep angry, right? It's like, everybody's like, oh, shut up. I want to go to sleep angry. Until they come to my office like, yeah, I have regret. I should have said more and done more. So have you heard that from any of your friends? You feel like through that experience, or maybe even now as an adult talking to your friends, do you think you have something to offer to your friends through that experience that helps them see their siblings differently?
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've heard it from two people, but I was doing a radio show when it happened, and we talked about it on the radio show. And then, so there was lots of people in the football community that were talking about it. And a couple of teenagers, I showed it to the teenagers that like I work with, and they were like, I need to go be nicer to my siblings. I just wanted you to know that because I wasn't sure if people told you that. So for you to hear me say that, like, what do you think?
I mean, that's amazing. I think I felt that way after everything happened. Like, I wanted to be nicer to all my siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I forgot your second question now. I was like tearing up over here.
No, I said what we're going to talk about after that is a perfect segue into the oldest daughter relationship role. So a quick little fast track to it. Oldest daughter-mom relationship is very unique. Let's just put it that way. It's special. In fact, it's so special, Disney just thought they'd just drop a couple $1 billion movies on it. No big deal. One called Brave. One's Frozen. And when I bring up Frozen, a lot of people go, wait, mom, oldest daughter relationship. I don't get it. I'm like, conceal, don't feel. She had something about her that was shameful to the family. So her way to help her family, specifically her mother, because that's, you gotta sometimes pretend like it's not real. It didn't happen. I don't have these issues. Conceal, don't feel. When I first saw that movie, I was like almost in tears because I was working with a couple of moms and oldest daughters, and I go, have you seen Frozen? Like, yes. I'm like, do you know what it's about? Yes, they're talking about the oldest daughter because the youngest daughter's like, what's wrong with Elsa? Like, why can't she just be my friend? Elsa was the mom now. And she did what you didn't do. She's like, I can't show my feelings. I can't show weakness to my little sister. I can't do those things because I have to be strong for everybody, and I get it. You want to be strong for everybody. But being strong for everybody in your position was helpful at times, but it may not have allowed you to develop as yourself. So for all the oldest daughters out there, because the thing about oldest daughter-mother relationship, I call it as you're really best friends, but one gave birth to the other. And when you come into this earth, it's like a best friendship that's kind of rocky sometimes where you're like, I swear, if they don't like it's like, you know more about me. As the oldest daughter's been around mom longer than the other kids. So the oldest daughter's like, Mom, remember you said that you were going to do it? Shut up. I'm trying to keep it together. So the oldest daughter can narc the mom out, and the mom knows the oldest daughter because it's a different relationship. When a mom holds a baby, that's a female looking at them. The mom's like, it's me, but it's not me. But it's me, but it's not me. It's a weird, like there's so much psychology on this behind it. It's always tripped me out. And so what the mom does at the moment, it's like, I'm holding this perfect version of me. I must not be that bad. If I could create something so beautiful, because Evie, when you were first born, you never lied yet. You never forgot to go to a class in high school and junior high, right? You never didn't do your chores. There was not, like, you were as close to perfect as possible. So by proxy, mom felt more whole and complete than she'd ever felt before in her life. And this is well documented with lots of moms with their firstborn child of the same sex. But in that same process, something really weird happens that's not very fun. The mom goes, I never want this to end. How do I keep this good feeling? I know, I'll just keep her perfect. And that's where all the problems come in, and that's where I get a job. Because what happens is, this is subconscious. Moms logically know they can't keep the baby perfect, but the mom's like, I want to protect you from all the things I don't like about me. So you need to be better than me. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. And we have all these great ideas when they're younger, but then you have other kids. Okay, well, I can't, like, it's hard to keep that attention for the oldest daughter. So what I want you to talk about for a second is I want you to talk about, in the mother oldest daughter relationship for you, what has been one of the hardest challenges to develop your own identity and your own personality? Because this is the challenge of mother oldest daughters, getting your own autonomy. Because when you're born, like, it's like, imagine a quarter, and the heads and the tails in the quarter, if you ever look at it, they're completely different. The only thing similar about the quarter is the size, the shape. But if you took a laser saw and you split the quarter in half, you can't go to the store and go, hey, this is 12 and a half cents. No, it's nothing. If it's not connected, it's not worth as much. It's really not worth anything. They could look totally different. You guys obviously don't look totally different, but I've had some moms and daughters, they look nothing alike because the daughter looked like the dad. Their personalities were different, but what was the same was they felt each other's energy. This is why it's called a symbiotic relationship. What happens to you, your mom feels it a little bit differently than the other kids. What happens to her, you feel it differently than any other kids feel it. You know, we've had conversations in the past when I'm joking around with you guys like, yeah, mom can come home. She's had a stressful day. He was like, okay, we got to do everything, get everything clean. The other kid's like, oh, mom's fine. She's just tripping. Like, mom's tripping. And you're like, no, you guys, this is really important. We need to help mom. So for you as the oldest daughter, what's been some of the hardest things, like having your own identity, your own personality, while still being a helpmate to your mom?
I've given this a lot of thought. I genuinely think it was the comparison, where anytime I was compared to my mom, it was always very well-intentioned. It was, you know, you look just like her. Oh, you read just like your mom. But I did get it in my head over the years where I'm like, my mom was this star volleyball player. She was this genius, and she's this incredible like crafter, and she makes these delicious meals.
And everybody likes her, right?
Everybody likes her, and she always nobody else's opinion seems to affect her when it comes to anything else.
Yeah, she doesn't cry in her hands at school sometimes when people say something.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm like, and I'm failing 8th grade math, and I just got cut from the school play. And I think it was genuinely this expectation mixed with this feeling of, I've already failed in so many ways to be like her. How am I ever going to measure up? And how do these things that are a little different about me fit into this mold that I want to be like? So I think that was the most difficult thing for me, especially after my first breakup. Because,
ooh, let's talk about that.
Well, my mom married her first boyfriend.
This is true.
So after my first breakup, I'm like, how am I going to be Sunny Mahe now? I failed. And
Mom's not allowed to talk right now. Keep going. Mom's like, what?
Yeah, in my mind, there was this mold that I'd always wanted to perfectly fit into. And throughout high school, we had a lot of the exact same things where I cared about school. I got really good grades. I didn't do the volleyball thing, and I think that was one area where there was a little strain in my mind where I had to make up for this one area where I'm not exactly like her.
So you had to be exceptional in other areas then?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it was specifically that moment because, you know, dating and marriage is this monumental thing for most people. Yeah. It was that one area that really was the tipping point for me. I was like, okay, I guess I'm not like her. And I guess that means I have no life.
You're going to be such a beacon for so many of your friends that are oldest daughters. Because when I teach this to anyone, families, clients, anyone, they'll always go to their friends like, oh, it's because you're the oldest daughter. And they go, what? And then they start to explain this. And the other friend's like, did you just read my diary? Like, what the heck? Because you don't have to be, it's just something about mom, oldest daughter. Like I said, the personalities, everything can be different. And the reason why I didn't want your mom to say anything is what you were talking about at that particular moment. She really needs to listen to this and take this in because this is great information. And the reason why it's great information is because she didn't feel and think any of those things. Like, wait, she didn't put those pressures on you. She wasn't telling you these things. That's why the oldest daughter, it's different. The oldest daughter, like the younger siblings, they do that with you. They do that with the older siblings. But who's your older sister? That's the closest thing you got, right? Like it's her. And so it makes sense that you're like comparing yourself, but you're not comparing yourself to someone 2 years older that you see also leaves their clothes laying around, that also has the same issues you have, that also can, like not do good in math or whatever, or a school play. What you're seeing is you're seeing someone who's already gone so far ahead, and you're seeing where they're at right now. And that is, I didn't know you were going to say that, but that is probably one of the top two things that oldest daughters have said. It's hard for me to become me, because you're always looking to like, am I comparable in any way towards this person? I'm just glad that you didn't take the opposite approach. The two typical approaches that oldest daughters take is either I'm going to stress myself out, have tons of unnecessary anxiety to be like this person. That's the route you took. Or, in case you didn't know that part, right? Or I'm going to go buck wild and I'm going to be gangster and I'm not going to be anything like her. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to embarrass our family. Oh, our family doesn't drink and smoke. I'm going to go drink and smoke. Our family doesn't do it. Oh, I'm going to do that. Oh, they don't like that style. I'm going to wear short belly shirts. Whatever it is to piss off that mom, those are usually the two. And guess what? I see both of them in my office. The reason why, because both are stressed. They just react to it differently. Both are trying to find their own identity. And that's why, and I want to ask you this, that's why those Disney movies hit different. That's why they're not like other movies. That's why they're going to be selling Moana merch and Frozen merch long past we're gone, like way past our life. Like Cinderella, they're still making millions of dollars off that movie. That was like in the 70s, right? So when you hear this whole entire thing from your daughter's perspective and what she's going through, does it sound like it actually is a kind of a unique challenge for an oldest daughter?
Absolutely. I'm not the oldest daughter.
I know. That's why I'm asking, is you didn't have the oldest daughters, my wife, oldest daughter, my daughter, oldest daughter. If I didn't teach this to them, it's been the best thing for the three of theirs relationships. But since you didn't have it, that's why I'm asking that question.
And so it's not things that I maybe even would have ever
guessed or thought, yeah.
Because like you mentioned earlier, I didn't tell you needed to be all those things.
Yeah, you were like, you got to be a D1 volleyball player,
yeah,
or else I will not love you.
Like we never pushed our, like, we both played Division I college athletics. And so I think we kind of achieved as much as we felt like we needed to. And so we've never pushed any of our kids to like, oh, you got to do this and do exactly what we did. Like we've encouraged, we let them try everything. We wanted them to just do whatever they wanted to do. If it was sports, if it was art, she's an amazing artist. And because
as an athlete, you're just doing sports, you get a scholarship, that's all you knew. You didn't know that everyone around the high school was like, oh, they're going to D1. You didn't really understand how this thing was like this popularity thing.
Mm. Well, I mean, it was a necessity for, I think, probably a lot of Polynesian athletes.
But you didn't see yourself, you weren't a fan of you. You were just doing you. That's what I meant. Like, you're just being an athlete.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, so popular that I'm at tournaments every weekend.
Yeah, and you're like,
I don't have any social life at all. But
if I don't do great, I'm going to dishonor my family. Like, they didn't get that part of it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we've always kind of tried to protect them from a lot of those pressures.
Yeah.
But I don't know how we could have foreseen the ones that they were going to put on themselves that we would never have intended or imagined.
But now that you're hearing it, though, what do you think? How do you feel about what you're saying, like the oldest daughter, like having those experiences?
It's humbling because I feel like she clearly sees a different thing than I even see in myself, that I've always said, I think you're so much better than me.
And that's the goal, right?
And I want it.
Yeah.
And so that breaks my heart a little bit to think that I've unintentionally put pressures on her that I never would have wanted. Those are, in my mind, chains. Being chained to being only what I am when I see her as so much more.
Because she doesn't know how you really look yourself in the mirror sometimes, how hard you are on yourself. She doesn't see that side. She only sees the outside, huh?
Yeah.
Evie, since you learned about this mother-oldest daughter relationship, and by the way, in the years I've known you, I'm so impressed. Like, when I first met you, you're like, hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going? And you're telling, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just kind of just doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And then now you're like, you're just sitting, you're like, okay, like, yeah, this is what's going on. Yeah, I suck at this, but I'm getting better. This I'm good at. Like, you're just kind of, the honesty you have with what's going on around you. I don't see you putting on an air of like, I have to make everybody happy around me. So for you, because your mom just said, like, you know, she heard you saying those things. Now the same question back for you. What's it like for you to hear like what your mom's saying right now? Because I was paying attention while she was talking, and like I could tell you were feeling something. So what were some of your thoughts that were going through your mind, or what were some of the feelings you had when she was talking?
It's a mix of surprising and also kind of saddening, where I don't know, it just clashes so hard in my mind, like to think that being just like her would be being chained to anything when it's one of the only things for most of my life I've wanted to achieve.
It was your goal, and she's like, no, don't be like me, babe, be way better than me.
It's like
she's like, don't be like me.
Drastically clashing ideas in my mind that not similarly, just this idea that what you see when you look in the mirror is so different from what I see it breaks my heart too, that you don't see all of the amazing things that I see when I look at you.
Like, you look at her like she's worthy of being admired.
Oh yeah.
Like that's a goal to be like her. And so hear her say that, you're like, wait a second, I didn't have any idea. And
that's my mom you're talking about.
I know, exactly, right? And exactly, like for me, that's why it's so cool for me to do a podcast like this, because usually it's just behind a closed door, even though this isn't like real therapy, because I have the disclaimer, okay, before that. But this is like OG therapy. It's like talking, like when you have if you're sitting with one of your best friends and her daughter was there and you're talking about the oldest daughter relationship, you would literally be having them have this conversation. You'd be doing the same thing I'm doing. And so it's so cool to see you looking at your mom and you looking at your daughter going, you're literally learning something in real time about each other. And it's been all these years that you've been just doing this thing and didn't even really actually understand what it was that you were reacting to and what it was that she was reacting to as well. Like, you didn't know that was not her goal for you to be like her. You're like, well, that's what I was trying to do the entire time. And you didn't know that she felt this pressure, but it doesn't make sense why she would, right? Like, it just wasn't something that you put on her.
Yeah, and I also think that it's really helpful that she is articulate enough to recognize that and express it. Because I think probably a lot of people feel it and
they don't know how to put into words.
To be vulnerable enough to share any of that.
And the truth will set you free. But how can you speak truth if you don't know how to explain it without... Because we've all had those, like, you start to say something and someone goes, wait, what? And they take it the wrong way and then you're like, never mind. That's not, and they just kind of scratch it like, I'm done. Anyways, what are we going to eat? And they're like, no, what were you saying? And it kind of feels like a trap to a bad argument or a conversation. So last thing, if you guys don't mind... let's talk about where you guys are at right now. I wanted to wait to this podcast to tell you this, so I didn't I'm so proud of you, both of you. From the time I first met you guys till now, you guys were always great people. But just seeing, because it's, when you know someone for years, you don't see them like every day, you can see incremental changes, right? You're like, oh, wow, your child's getting so big because you don't see him all the time. So every time I'm around you guys and I see you guys, what I've been seeing that's undeniable and it's totally obvious to me is that your guys' strength has to be simultaneously. Your growth has to be simultaneously. You're not allowed to be as happy as you want to be when she's not really seeing what she needs to be happy herself. And Grant, this could be said about any parent with any kid, but it's even more intensified with the firstborn daughter in your guys' situation. And so as you're watching her throughout these past couple years, I want her to go first, but I want you to say this to your mom, then you say this to her. But as these past couple of years, I want you to say what you're most proud of your mom doing, because it's allowed you to also take bigger steps inside yourself. Because if you're idolizing her, if you're admiring her, if you're following her guide, when you see her make level changes, then that's all validation. Like, oh, I could do it too. If I had $1 for every time I heard a kid tell me that they couldn't have their hopes and dreams in the future, and I would say, why? And they'd say, well, because my parents, they don't really, it's, you know, they don't support that, or maybe they don't think that's important, or they want me to take a different path. And not knowing that when I talked to the parents are like, I wasn't telling you that. I just didn't want you to screw up your life. Like, I didn't want you to be too much like me. So for you, Evie, like where you're at right now, like what are the things that you're most grateful for your mom for and her growth, because it's allowed you to like figure out more about who you are and what you like?
Wow.
That was a deep one, huh?
I'd probably just start with, I don't know if this is necessarily something new, but just the willingness to even look into grief counseling initially, I think was absolutely inspired. There are a lot of my friends that have talked about their parents' hesitancy towards looking into mental health complications. And I think that's been one of the most impressive things to me. It's your generation, it seems, does not believe in mental health very much.
Or they'd be like, that's not real.
It's not real. And like, you're just kind of weak.
Yeah, you just got to be tough.
And I think that was super cool that you and Dad, but specifically you, continuously choose to learn more and
put it as a priority.
Yeah, put it as a priority. And you continuously choose more uncomfortable paths sometimes in favor of learning and trying to be better. And I see you struggling with different concepts and new routines even. And it's super cool to see you always come out on top. And even though I also see you struggling with different things still, you keep doing it, and you'll complain, but you never complain in a way that makes me feel like, oh, is this like the breaking point? Like it's a hopeless
complaint. Like she's going to give up. She's going to tap out? Like, you know, she can't stop being a mom, right? We kind of need her.
Yeah, you've always just been this source of strength for me and for the rest of the family. And I've just always been so impressed with your willingness and dedication to keep trying and keep looking for new things and just never giving up on this idea that it will get better and that we can improve. And also your willingness to be very accepting of where things are now and where your different relationships with the kids are right now, or just some unchanging things, that it's okay and we can still be happy and we can still have joy, even if some things are not where we would like them to be.
She's not forcing it.
Yeah.
Right? She's not making like, we have to heal.
That's another complaint I'll hear from some of my friends is they don't want to talk, where even though we've been through some weird periods in our relationship, we've gotten through them, and I never thought we wouldn't. It never crossed my mind that things would always be in this weird place, because I know what you're like. I know that she's just trying something new that I disagree with right now. I'm trying something new that she doesn't really like right now. I've just always known you to be somebody that everything will be okay eventually.
Very well said, Evie. And I'm glad that you're seeing that with other people and their parents. And I would hate, you would never wish people go through the tragedy and trauma that your family went, but you do see there's a huge blessing from that. You do not take things lightly anymore. And you see relationships like, hey, if we were going to break up as a family, that would have been a while. Like that would have been back then. Like it's like you got stronger because of it. Mm-hmm. And so is it safe to assume that what you just said about your mom, you always know, you can tell about this. Is it safe to assume that maybe you've had some fears in your life, and watching her was kind of like, it was like your oak tree, like that solid thing that you could hold on to, because you being the oldest daughter, no matter what fears came across your life, if she didn't have those fears, did that ever help you? Like, maybe I could get through it too?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking.
No,
I take time to process.
I was thinking
sometimes.
one specific thing about what you said was that you're watching her being this consistent person, regardless if she's having a good day or bad day, she shows up the same way, right? Like she's going to do her best. Sometimes it'll be more smiling, sometimes a little bit less, but she's doing it, right? She may not be whistling while she's always working, right? But she's doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just look at it as like, you're looking at her, you're gaining strength from her. You're looking at her. It's like, hey, my mom's not giving up, so there's no reason why I should give up. And that's helped you really push through some of your fears, because you've been open up with me before about like anxieties and worries and stuff, which everybody has, but they can be debilitating sometimes. Sometimes they can stop you in your track. You're like, and with a family that's gone through what you've gone through, oh my gosh, I've had so many families that a couple of the kids in the families, like they literally can't get up and do anything unless it's like life-threatening. Like it has to be urgent. And then they're there. But if something's not urgent, they're like, I can't even do my homework unless it's like, I'm going to not be able to play football, or like something's got to be weighing on them. And you don't have that. Like you have her to look towards. Things don't have to get worse for you to know how to make them better. I like that. Same question, Mom. Like right now, like looking at your daughter, like how has she helped you specifically even recently? Because you know, we're all friends and you've told me like, man, like you're seeing just this young woman really starting to catch her stride. So share a little bit about that with us.
I think her willingness to be vulnerable and to open up has been the most impressive part for me, because for so long, so much of it was kept in, and
nothing scares a parent more, just so you know out there, if you're not a parent yet, when your kids won't tell you what's going on. Oh, that's not good. That's not good.
Yeah, because then you're just left to guess, and
your mind's always going to go.
I can't guess right. At least I can't guess.
So I just
I
assume the
probably,
worst.
in a lot of ways, did guess wrong. Where I thought, oh, she just needs to be busy, or she just needs to, do these other things that it's like totally unhelpful. But I think that as she has evolved in her confidence in her own abilities, it has helped her blossom into this version of herself that can still be confident even in her insecurities.
Yeah.
That she can express things like she's done today and maintain this air of confidence, this regal version of herself.
And you've been seeing that growing over time. Because what you were talking about, like we were alluding to before, was a more like kind of like to herself, not really putting it out there, don't want to rock the boat, don't want to make anyone mad, don't want to do anything. And sometimes when you express yourself, you take risks. And even when you say things that you want to do and you try hard at something, you make yourself vulnerable. So she's making herself more vulnerable. And out of that, you're seeing she's becoming more articulate. She's like knowing, like more sure of where she stands on things, where before she might have just been like, oh yeah, whatever you guys are doing, let's do that. Like, but now she's like, no, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, that's been really fun to watch her come into her own, because I think when she talked about her big breakup, like even looking back to high school, I didn't date because I didn't have the opportunity.
Too busy.
Well, and also the boys don't want to date the girl that can beat them at basketball.
This is true. This is true. They're like, let's go play pickleball. No, I'm good.
But I think her version of that was, I'm just going to not talk to boys at all.
Just play it safe.
Because
Because
mom didn't.
Yeah.
And so looking back on that, like, it's just so interesting to see the woman that she has become through not trying to be me. And what a much better version I feel like she is of Evie when she's not trying to be Sunny.
Yeah. Yeah, because there is no Sunny 2.0. Like there's not a second version of you. Mm-hmm. It's an evolved version of you, which is Evie. Like that's, and now she can work on Evie 2.0, right?
The evolution of
like,
Evie.
Like it could,
Sorry, Pokemon reference.
Little Pokemon reference for all the fans out there. But it's true though. It's like she can just be her, and that's why I asked you the question. how has it been challenging or hard to have your own identity? This is all comes down to identity and autonomy as an individual being. And in this relationship between a mother and oldest daughter, it can be freeing if you're partnering with each other. If you're not partnering with each other and you're odds with each other, it's completely debilitating. I've had oldest daughters, this one oldest daughter, she took a volleyball scholarship to Florida from Utah. I said, why Florida? She goes, it was the furthest school that offered me a scholarship. And it was because of her mom. We did a lot of work. She eventually moved back here and played at a local school. And it was all because of very similar. She's like, I thought I had to be this. And mom's like, I never wanted you to be that. So, but no, you did. And there was just this weird miscommunication. It was like, I wanted my daughter to be better than me. And the daughter's like, I thought you thought I wasn't as good as you. And it was just this thing that they missed each other. But once they were gone, I told her, I said, you can go to Florida, but she'll be in your mind every single day. You'll be thinking about your mom. Something was said. When she came back, she's like, you're right. I wanted so, at least when I was at home with her, she and I could fight and argue and then cry and then have a moment and we'd be fine. But when I was that far away, we were just left with just the hurt and pain and the frustration we had. So moving back healed their relationship. That's why it's so cool to see you guys just seeing each other grow, because you have to grow together or you go down together. It's just something unique about that relationship. And you guys, I've been doing this for over 25 years. If I haven't seen it hundreds of times, I wouldn't even believe it myself. That's why I make such a big deal of it and do a whole podcast episode on it. My other podcast episode has over 1 million downloads for that episode. So that's probably another reason why I think people really want to know something about this thing, because we see it every day. If Disney makes billions of dollars, it must be relatable. So now the final question. Where's your relationship now? Are you guys more brave? Are you guys more Elsa? Like, where would you say, if you had to use character references, where would you say that you felt your relationship was more at the beginning? So one mom and daughter did this one time. They said, we started off, what was the analogy they used? It wasn't even a Disney one. It was another one. But then they said they ended up with Meredith and the mom at the end of the movie. That's what their relationship is now. Little spoiler if you've never seen Brave. Okay, it ends really well, and the mom, they mend the bond. Okay, that's what happens. They mended the bond. So where would you guys say your relationship is right now, or where do you think it's trending? Like, is it at the end of Moana? You know, just using some sort of metaphor like that.
Well, for starters,
Yeah.
I dare you to name 5 good relationships with the mother and daughter in Disney.
Well, that's what I said. The way it ends with Meredith and her mom, okay,
Yeah.
and with Moana, right? Because the way it started, or the way at its most difficult times, that's where people's attention goes to the movies. But if Disney movies always ended horrible, I don't think they'd make as much money. They have some sort of happiness to it. Yeah. So where would you guys think you're at? Because I have an idea where I think it is. In fact, I already tipped off and I said it. With the Meredith, like, mending the bond. Because your bond, I don't think needed to be mended from your relationship. I think it just, the hurt of the family had to be mended. And you two have such an important role to that. So it wasn't like you guys had a tumultuous relationship, right? We can all agree to that. So where do you think it's at right now?
If I were to use like a pop culture reference.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Disney. I'm sorry, any pop culture reference. Yeah.
Well, I would probably say like Rory and Lorelai from season 7.
Oh.
It's my least favorite season.
I didn't see season 7, but explain so people understand.
In terms of their relationship, like, they had been going through a lot of different things. And even though what was actually happening in the show, I don't like it. My favorite seasons are 1 through 4. But they hadn't really been through anything yet, so it was easier for them to have
to come to that climax
happy,
of season
like,
7.
oh, everything's just kind of quirky and we're just funny and all. By season 7, which is the last season, I believe, they had gone through some pretty crazy things and they had disagreed a ton, and there were periods of time where they weren't really talking to each other. But when everything was good again, it just looked like they could talk about things so much more openly, and they could make fun of each other for different things that were like, well, you're not perfect.
They can use more light humor instead of making fun. They're kind of joking with each other. When you have a good relationship with someone, you can use humor. When you kind of have beef with someone or being passive aggressive, it's more sarcastic, right? It pokes a little bit more.
And when you can communicate through hard things together, the jokes are actually funny and they're not just
personal. They're not attacks either.
They're not attacks, and they're not just covering something up. We're not just purposefully trying to be funny because nothing is funny right now between us.
Because if it's an awkward moment. So you're using humor to try to cover over it.
Yeah, it's not a cover. It's more of a connection thing where it's like, no, we are actually laughing. We do actually find each other funny right now.
Heck yeah.
So that's what I would probably say,
like
though it's my least favorite season.
But it makes a point. And that's why I brought up Meredith. It's Merida, right? From the movie? Sorry, Meredith. The reason why I thought that was really cool, like, is your guys' relationship based upon what you just said about looking up to her, because I thought it was ironic, obviously it's part of the story, that the mom turned into a bear. Think about the metaphor of mama bear. The control. I'm like, that was not by accident when I saw that, because that is the epitome. And in the movie, Meredith looked like a mom. You can't do this. No weapons on the table. You can't be who you want to be. And she was just trying to protect her. So it was being the mama bear. And then the mama bear kind of almost tried to kill him too. So it was this really good thing. But at the very end, she saw that her mom was bearish in her love to protect her from hurt and pain. And to not, because she was going to run a kingdom. You know what I mean? She had such a high position, like you said, royalty. Like that, you see your daughter as, she's a rightful heir to the family's throne. She is a queen. So that's why I thought it was a cool like example of a pop culture one. I shouldn't have said only Disney, because any sort of metaphor out there could be from a story or a book. Sometimes I do this. I've never done this on podcasts, but I do this in my therapy sessions with people because stories stick. Polynesian people, like long before they could write, Native Americans write, it was verbal, oral. That's how they passed on the culture. So for you, anything come to mind as like what you think your relationship has kind of evolved into now, using any sort of reference whatsoever?
I do think, like, when you talked about Frozen,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't a mother-daughter,
Yeah.
I think there was that moment, like with Anna, where she finally understands.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just had all these feelings and I didn't know what was going on. And now she understands, and that's kind of what creates the change for their relationship. And I do feel like there have been moments like that for me, to where it was like, okay, thank you for helping me to understand, because I was trying my hardest to create this version of how do I make this make sense to me.
Well, at the end of the movie, she's literally frozen, and her younger sister has to she had to give it back to her and give her the love and actually help it, and then they had that bond. But you're right, until they knew each other, what was going on in their mind, how could they be of help to each other?
Right.
Yeah,
and so,
I like that, because you're right, because that's a good reference, because it's not a mother-daughter, but that's what it is. And I said mom and daughters, oldest daughter, they're really supposed to be best friends when they get older. If you do it right, best friends don't always have to see each other, but they're always there for each other.
Yeah.
They're always one phone call away.
Yeah. So in some ways, I almost feel like it's more like Rapunzel and her birth mom.
Ooh, okay.
To where it's like she was lost for so long, and I didn't know her truly. Like, I knew her, but I didn't know truly what was happening inside and what she was going through. And so then at the end, they're reunited, and it's a true mother-daughter experience rather than...
I think we're building a script for Hollywood right now, man. I'm like, yeah, we might have... Hey, let's not say no more. Disney, you're going to have to pay us for the rest of this information. No, I like that a lot, though. That makes a lot of sense, son. It makes a lot of sense. I'm just so intrigued and curious, because I get to do this for a living, but when I do this on a podcast, knowing other people are going to hear it, I'm like, I want everybody to have a peek behind real family relationships, because obviously we started off with something dun, 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 like heavy, but that's just one blip. Like, that's not your life. That's not your family's identity. And to see what came out of it, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And if my loyal listeners from a long time, because I got probably about 25,000 people that have always been there because they have multiple kids, so they keep on listening to the podcast. But I had your husband a long time ago on the podcast, Reno, and it really hit hard for a lot of people, especially a lot of guys, when he talked about he didn't believe in therapy. Mental health, stupid, just whatever. And then he's like, I'll admit it. And that's what I loved about Reno in that episode, where he's like, no, I was wrong. And here's why I was wrong. I needed this. If I didn't do it, then why would my kids do it? Why would my wife do it? And sometimes you just got to go first. You know, so thank you guys for being an example and going literally first on this podcast. Because all the people I've hit up for this, they're always like, yes, I'll do it, but I might need some time to mentally get prepared because they don't trust me. They're scared I'm going to say something on here and then I'm not going to edit it out or something like that. Like, can you edit out my crime? Like, no. Especially when I get a lot of the big poly guys in here. We're going to slow up the camera and focus in on their tears, the alligator tears coming on, because there's nothing like watching a big, gigantic poly guy talk about his family and break down and cry. So all of our listeners look forward to listening to a bunch of big, tough, strong people be vulnerable. Well, you guys, I had so much fun, and I hope you guys had fun today too.
Yeah.
And thanks for just sharing the culture, because you guys, a lot of cultures out there are like Polynesian in the simple example of they put relationships a high priority, and food's a metaphor of love. If you want to let people know you love them, I know my Latinos out there like ding, ding, ding. Yeah, the barbecue is like, that's the best way to bring family and friends together. Give them food, because back in the days, food was hard to come by. So if you give someone food, that means you must really love them. Especially with poly food, it takes a long time to cook and it's really good. You don't want to share with people you don't like, right? So thank you guys for coming to the podcast today. And as always, you guys, thank you for following us here on OG Therapy and also on this new Kava Konfessions. Follow us on Instagram and OG Therapy. I want to give a shout out to our two sponsors, Shy Social Health Initiative. It's the nonprofit that I helped found a long time ago. We're letting people know that you got medical health, which is physical health. You got mental health. Look forward to the next revolution is going to be social health. And also to our biggest shout out for our sponsor, our studio, Happy Rabbit Productions. If you want to produce a great film, documentary, it could be a feature film, could be a documentary, hit up Happy Rabbit Productions. Hit them up in the DM on Instagram at Happy Rabbit Productions. They got it going on, guys. Look at this setup. I mean, this is really nice gear, really equipment, and they're great people as well and do great work. So until next time, you guys, thank you and be cool.